By the late 20th century, global superpowers exhausted the potential of physical territory. The map lines were drawn, and proxy wars stalled. Geopolitical focus shifted toward the final unconquered territory, human cognition. Intelligence agencies mapped the human brain as an active, strategic battle space. They believed that by identifying the exact mechanisms of memory, persuasion, and obedience, a nation could dominate the international board without firing a single shot. These agencies routed billions of dollars into classified programs, tasking psychiatrists and neurologists with a specific directive: find a way to weaponize human psychology. While the public monitored the threat of nuclear exchange, a parallel arms race prioritized cognitive control. The goal was a zero-sum advantage over the way people think and perceive reality. This diagram illustrates the core theory. Researchers viewed inherent human limitations as mechanical bottlenecks. They treated the brain as hardware that could be modularly deconstructed and re-engineered. The project focused on overriding natural neural pathways with external inputs to force cognitive enhancement and manipulate behavior. To trigger these upgrades, the government relied on a phenomenon called cognitive overload. Cognitive overload is a state where the brain is subjected to extreme, sustained psychological stress. The theory suggested that by reaching this threshold, the mind would be forced to adapt its own architecture to survive the strain. This attempt to treat biological consciousness like upgradable hardware created a direct conflict between bureaucratic ambition and the rigid limits of human biology. Building a clinical trial for mind control required solving a massive logistical problem. A standard study requires controlled environments and measurable variables, but the classified nature of the work made public recruitment impossible. The solution was a dual-track selection process. Group A consisted of military personnel and institutionalized wards. These subjects submitted to vaguely defined medical trials and subsequently vanished from all public records. Group B included unwilling civilians subjected to variables without their knowledge. This created a massive, covert double-blind study. A double-blind study is a trial where neither the participants nor the researchers know who is receiving a particular treatment, intended to prevent bias in the results. By removing the requirement of informed consent, the researchers bypassed the foundational ethics of modern science. Subjects were reduced to raw, expendable data points. The scale of this methodology demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice citizens to validate a theoretical hypothesis. While the bureaucratic execution was precise, the biological results contradicted the government's hopes for enhancement. The empirical findings showed a consistent pattern of physiological rejection. The archives identify Subject 47 as the documented statistical median for these experiments. This figure represents the aggregate average of how the human brain responds to these specific cognitive stressors. Reports describe an initial phase of physiological rejection. As the brain attempted to stabilize against the conditioning, subjects exhibited erratic behavior, including severe paranoia and chronic insomnia. This chart shows the secondary phase of breakdown. As the intensity of the experimental stressors increased, memory retention plummeted. The brain was defensively deleting its own neural pathways to protect itself from cognitive overload. Eventually, every subject reached the terminal phase. The internal systems of the brain reached a point of total failure, leading to complete psychological collapse. The data proved that the human mind has a definitive breaking point. It does not upgrade under pressure. It shatters. Decades have passed since these classified experiments finally ended, yet thousands of pages still remain heavily classified today. The archives likely contain no evidence of successful superpowers or perfected mind control. If those technologies functioned, they would have been integrated into modern military doctrine or declassified for industrial profit. Standard bureaucratic logic dictates that governments classify failures more rigorously than successes. Successes provide a strategic advantage. Failures provide evidence of systemic error and poor judgment. These files document a state-sponsored destruction of life. Declassifying them would expose the government to massive legal liability and domestic outcry regarding the treatment of its own citizens. The classified stamp serves as a shield for the institution. It prevents the public from seeing the full consequences of a project driven by administrative hubris. The project left behind a clear scientific lesson. The human mind is a fragile, interconnected ecosystem. It cannot be treated like an engine capable of forced mechanical upgrades. The cold logic of the initial hypothesis ignored the biological reality of the outcome. The researchers achieved data, but at the cost of the individual subjects. The legacy of these experiments is the permanent loss of human identity in the pursuit of a failed theory. While the methods are now visible, the full scope of what the government was desperate to achieve remains hidden. What specific human limits do you think they were trying to hack? Share your theory in the comments.